In this video, I'm going to revisit the lighting for the scene. The lighting that I've been using so far is the simple lighting rig that I set up towards the start of the course. And this has been perfectly adequate for me to use while I've been shading and texturing. However, it's not the lighting I want to use for my final render. For the final render, I'd like to use lighting that is a little bit more appealing and flattering to both the shoe and the materials. And so in order to achieve this, I'm going to edit the existing lights in order to give me a more polished image. And I'm also going to make use of the high dynamic range image that we imported at the start of the course, and that is going to help me complement the existing area lights. So I'm going to switch to a 3D viewport and we'll take a look at the existing lighting rig. Now, there's several ways of actually selecting lights in Modo. You can obviously select them directly in a viewport like this and then access their properties. You can also access them in the item list. We are here. And finally, you can also access them in the shader tree. Just click on the shading tab, and if you scroll down to the bottom of the shader tree, there's a section called lights, and if you expand that, you can also select the lights via this method. And the approach I use when lighting is to only work with one light at a time, because that means I can really clearly see exactly how that particular light is affecting the scene. So as my first step, I'm going to disable all of the lights one by one. I'm also going to expand the environment, and I'm going to select the environment material. I'm going to set the environment type to a constant, which I'm going to turn completely black. So if I hold Shift and click and drag to the left on the color, it's going to turn that zenith color black. And now I'm going to open a preview render panel here on the left hand side. So I'll click on this icon. And if I run preview, you're not going to see anything because the scene is now currently completely black. So now I'm going to turn my lights on one at a time and position them. So let's start with this light, which is my main key light. And of course, as I enable it in the shader tree, it becomes visible in preview. So I'll select the light in the shader tree. Let me just reposition the viewport. And what I'd like to do is to rotate this light a little bit so it's shining more on the sort of top and front of the shoe. So I'm going to hit the E key to activate the rotation tool. I'm going to set my action center to origin so that my light rotates around the shoe. And I'm just going to rotate it until it's pointing more towards the front part of the shoe. And then I'd like to bring this light forward a little bit closer to the shoe. So I'm going to hit the W key to activate the move tool. And then I'm going to drag on the red handle and just bring the light closer into the shoe. Once I'm happy with the position of the light, I'm going to hit Q to drop the move tool. Then I'm going to disable this light and I'm going to take a look at the next light in the list. And that's the light that's shining slightly behind the shoe. And what I'd like to do with that is just to bring it much closer and just use it to create a rim light here on the rear part of the heel. So I'm going to select the light and then I'm going to change the action center to local. I'm going to activate the transform tool with the Y key, and that combines rotation, move, and scale. Let's start by rotating just like so, and then just moving it so it's much, much closer. Rotating it so it's just shining on that rear part of the shoe. I just need to tweak the position as well. Maybe bring it closer. And once I'm happy with the position and the rotation of this light, I'll hit Q to drop the transform tool. With that done, I can disable this light and I'm going to take a look at the final and third light. And that's just shining straight down on the top of the shoe. And I'm perfectly happy with how that looks. So we can now look at all three lights in combination. So I will re-enable the other two lights in the scene. And that's a good start, but I'd like to tweak the intensity of the lights. So I'm going to begin by selecting the main key light, and let's scroll down until we find the radiance setting. And I'm going to reduce that to 4 for the time being. Then I'm going to select the light that's shining down on the top of the shoe. I'm going to reduce its radiance to just 0.5. And that works a lot better for me because the results are softer and less contrasty. Now, at this point, I'm reasonably happy with the lighting on the shoe itself. However, the background is way too dark. And the way I'm going to fix that is to use an HDR image in the environment in order to provide lighting over the entire scene. And this is in fact already set up because earlier in the project I imported a high dynamic range image into the environment slot. So what I'm going to do is simply to re-enable it, and we'll take a look at how that is affecting the scene. And as you can see, by simply enabling this HDR image in the environment slot, I can provide lighting over the entire scene without needing to add any additional area lights. But what I'd like to do is just to make sure that I've optimized the angle of this HDR image so that it really complements the shoe in the best possible way. So in order to do this, I'm going to start by disabling all of the area lights, and I'm just going to take a look at the effect of the HDR image on its own. Then I'll come over to the studio lighting image in the shader tree, and I'm going to select it, and I'll switch to the texture locator tab. Now it's currently rotated 180 degrees in the Y. I'd like to just experiment with a few other angles just to see how that's going to affect the look of the scene. So let's try 270 degrees. And as you can see, that does actually affect the scene quite profoundly. I'm going to keep rotating this image. Let's try 290. That's made a less dramatic difference, but it's still looking quite good. I like the fact that we've got this sort of shadowed area here on the side of the shoe, and that complements the existing area lights quite nicely. I'm just going to rotate it just a fraction more. Let's try 310. And that, I think, is looking quite good. So with that done, I'm going to re-enable the area lights so we can have a look at how the area lights and the HDR image are working in combination together. We have some nice definition of the form of the shoe with this sort of soft modeling that's being carried out with the area lights. However, I think this area is a little bit too hot, so I'm going to select the key light in the viewport, and let's go to the area light properties, and I'm just going to reduce its radiance down to 3. And with that done, I'm just going to collapse this preview render, and I'm going to run preview render in the main viewport so we get clearer picture of what our lighting actually looks like. And as you can see, the combination of the 3 area lights with the HDR image is creating this really nice soft lighting on the shoe that helps to define the form but without overwhelming the image with contrast. And although this lighting is looking pretty good, I do think there's a bit of room for improvement. If I just zoom in on this area here, there's something I really like about the angle we have of this rim light. And it's the way that the light is catching the fur and the bump in the material that's really helping to show off the quality of this suede. But if I zoom back out and then zoom in on the front part of the shoe where we also have a suede panel, the lighting really doesn't work so well here because it's frontal lighting and it's making the material look very flat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom back out, and then I'm going to open an OpenGL viewport here on the left-hand side. And just because I have multiple items selected, I'm going to hit the escape key just to deselect everything. Then I'll reselect my key light in the viewport. I'm going to set the action center to origin. Then I'm going to hit E to invoke the rotation tool, and I'm going to rotate the light so that it's not shining so directly on the front of the shoe, but giving me more of a rim lighting effect to really try and bring out the texture in that suede. Then I'm going to reset the action center to none, and then I'm going to hit the W key to invoke the move tool, and let's just move the light so it's slightly closer and also just slightly further to the right. And I'll just keep tweaking the position of the light, keeping an eye on preview, until I get the kind of effect I'm looking for with the light raking nicely over the suede. And I think that's looking pretty good, although it's a little bit too hot here now, so I'm going to reduce the radiance of this key light down to 2. With that done, I'm going to hit Q to drop the move tool, and I'm going to collapse this viewport, and we'll take a look at a higher resolution render. And I'm now much happier with the lighting in the scene. I feel it's much more impactful and dramatic, and it's also really helping to show off the quality of the materials more convincingly. So with the lighting now finalized, I'm ready to move on to the next stage in the project.